Oh, good.
So welcome everybody. Thank you for attending one of our most anticipated events of this spring 2021 semester. My name is Mahak Tiwari, and I'm the Mount San Jacinto College chapter president and founder of Hope in STEM. We are a STEM honor society and club at MSJC that dedicates itself to STEM disciplines.
Hi everyone, my name is Dova Plata. I'm the Vice President for Hope in STEM. I would like to thank everyone for coming, and I again apologize for the interference. It was something that was unexpected. But we hold plenty of events, presentations, and activities for our STEM community, and we invite you to future events that hopefully won't, have the same mistakes as this one. But thank you again for coming.
So before we start, I would like to ask if everybody has a band that they're listening to. So for example, I listen to Nirvana, Beatles, I listen to Imagine Dragons, Arctic Monkeys, just a lot of different bands. And yeah, you guys can drop it down in the chat below, and yeah. Unmute yourself.
I'm all about Australian metal. Although I do like Tame Impala. I'm listening to that's a lot of fun. A Steely Dan fan.
What about Inclines, Gene?
Incline, yeah. Thanks for that, Mahak. So Inclined was my band. We were signed to Columbia Records, and you probably saw that picture of the reunion up there on the invite. What else? Stick Figures, The Movement, Sister Trails Camp. Who is it? Somebody, have you heard the Cocteau Twins? Here, I'll put that in the chat. Actually, my favorite band is the Cocteau Twins. I can say that with some confidence.
Anybody else would like to share? Your time is now.
You gotta start calling out names. Jacqueline, Nick.
Yeah, what about you, Nick?
Adolfo, right?
Rihanna.
Virginia. Oh, here we go. That's right, Lincoln Park. Okay, Styles. Fleetwood Mac, yeah. Fleetwood Mac rumors. No one can deny that. Okay, well, Jacqueline chimed in. We're not gonna do mix at once. Nick, we need you, man. All right, Mahak, we ready?
Yeah, let's do this. All right, so now to introduce our musical talent and JPL/NASA engineer, Mr. Eugene Perry. Long a fan of all things technical, be it dissecting personal computers, PowerShelling, SharePoint farms, writing progressive music, or just owling at home in Temecula, Gene has had his mind on the business of technology and how to navigate the new frontiers of technology careers. He's currently an enterprise application engineer 4 at JPL, and I would like to congratulate him as he is now a full-time employee at NASA. So congratulations, Gene. He is...
Thank you.
You're welcome. He's been in this role for over 4 years, with a history of over 20 years in information technology in a variety of different roles and industries. It's become clear that there is no direct path to success in technology. You have to move with technology. It does not move with you. Let's get ready to rock and roll.
Mahak, well, thank you so much for that introduction, and tip of hat to Adolfo and to Haley as well, who worked with me to put together a program for you. And, we're going to be doing this for an hour. So let's have fun. It's important to do that if you are serious about what you do and you are looking to pursue a career in any sort of the STEM related fields. I have some information for you, and I can share my experience with you and try to help you navigate the wacky world of STEM, be it science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. But really, today we're focused on. Today we are laser focused on technology. So let's start with that. Let me set up my screen here. And I suppose I can kind of keep moving off to the side here. Great. Okay. So as Mahak mentioned, my name is Eugene William Perry. I work at the Jet Propulsion Lab and have been doing so for almost 5 years now. As of August, the Jet Propulsion Lab is home to the Deep Space Network and is basically committed to robotic exploration of our solar system and universe. I'm an enterprise application engineer 4. I'll be coming on board as a collaboration platform analyst, and I'm so proud of the opportunity to serve the engineers, scientists, and analysts of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Caltech, and NASA. Okay, let's get into this fancy dancy presentation here. As mentioned, I'm focused on technology today, the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry, with the key word there being industry. The business of space is a business, and the idea behind a business is to make money. So an FFRDC, which is a federally funded research development center, spends money, and it allows the United States of America to have basically resources that are available that might not otherwise be available if it was in-house or just a specific set of, I suppose you could say, affiliates or contractors. So JPL is the only FFRDC within the NASA family. We'll get into that. So this is a quick overview of what we're looking at. We'll do a quick intro, talk a little bit about me, blah, 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 blah. We're going to talk about JPL, NASA, Caltech. What are we currently working on? We'll watch a couple of videos of 3 projects in particular that are near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about working in technology, which is kind of a pain because it doesn't sit still. It's not like a fixed kind of art or industry. It evolves. And so you have to move with it. You have to be agile, and you have to be prepared for change. Finally, we'll talk about internships and the number of opportunities that exist for young people who are excited about this type of industry and how to make your way through it. So let's get started. My name is Eugene William Perry, and I have been doing this for some time. You can see that I went to City College for 9 years. I took about a 2 or 3 year break because the band that I was playing in was signed to Columbia Records, which was fascinating. So it was like, fare thee well, Santa Monica City College. And then 3 years later, after the second album wasn't picked up and we were like, another band was kind of signed in favor of us, it was like, hello, Santa Monica City College. So remember that the same people that you meet on the way up, you might meet up with on the way down. It costs you nothing to be civil. All my instructors recognized me and they're like, hey, where'd you go? And I just was like, I just took a break. I didn't really get into the details with them. So 9 years at Santa Monica City College, and really time well spent. I took a lot of like creative classes and art classes. I have a music degree. What good does that do you in information systems? Well, it was a stepping stone towards my information systems degree, which leads me to Western Carolina University. Why Western Carolina University? Are they renowned for their technology department? Not necessarily. It didn't matter because you grow where you're planted, right? That's where I happened to be at that time. I wanted to be in Western North Carolina, and WCU was the time and the place for me. I had great instructors there. I had some not so good instructors there, and I let them know that. And so you should remember that especially in this day and age, people are open to feedback. And if you're not getting something that you want or need, you are paying for your education. chances are you are paying for your education with interest. So make sure that you're getting what you want. I did internships. I did a number of internships. I did volunteer work. I interned at places that you wouldn't really think lend itself to information technology, but these were smaller industries and organizations that needed help with information technology. And it was a great learning opportunity for me. If you can get an internship, take it. Even if it's not directly related to what you're doing, you may be able to apply whatever it is that you are looking to do. There will hopefully be people like professors, instructors, or mentors along the way that will help you keep focused on what it is that you want from your education. Internships are a great pathway to success. I received 2 scholarships. I applied for them. I applied and I followed up with them and I pursued them. They're out there. There's hundreds and thousands of internships that are available to help you along the way. You can apply them directly towards your, towards whatever it is that you're studying. And oftentimes there may be more kind of specific things that are available to you. So seek out those niche scholarships. They're there. I listed kind of the string of industries that I've worked in or the companies that I've worked in. And you can see that, so Biblio was a company based in Western North Carolina, and they deal in used, rare, and out of print books. I went on to work in tax compliance. I learned all about tax compliance. I worked in a medical devices company at Abbott Vascular here in Temecula, IBM, Jack in the Box, Cedars-Sinai, Avanade. It all led to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And a lot of that was just because along the way in this niche technology that I was working in, I was very well established and kind of known because I was very passionate about what I was doing. So not the most direct path. And that's something to keep in mind when you are pursuing your degree in technology is oftentimes it's never a straight path. And as you get closer and closer to being a professional in your career, you'll find that your scope narrows and you start to become more laser focused on one specific technology. We'll get into that later. So that's a little bit about me. I'm really happy working in technology. On a side note, I like music a lot. So let me see if I can point you in the direction of some of the instruments that I play. So I play a Chapman stick. I also play an NS stick, a couple instruments over there. I really like to play music. It's a great way to express myself. It's a very unorthodox instrument. If you do a search on Eugene Perry and Chapman stick JPL, you see that I won the JPL's Got Talent contest back in 2016. I was very proud of that. And while I didn't think about much of it at the time, I remember my manager saying, that's the most recognition 172 has got in a long time. So I had brought integrity to the organization and I had applied my city college AA in music. And he carried my amp all the way back to the car. It was a really great moment and I'll never forget it. So you never quite know, with how you're going to apply your degree. Let's talk about the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. JPL, located in Pasadena, California, has been around since 1936. So if you're good with the numbers, you know that NASA didn't come along till 1955. JPL predates an organization that was wholly committed to the exploration of space. How is that and why is that? I encourage you to look up and learn about the history of Jet Propulsion, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, because it is so fascinating. It was, an independent organization, and then at some point it became focused on making missiles. Right, the intent was to be able to have something to. And this is around the time of the Second World War, and so there was research being done to kind of counter this. The V2 rocket. Now I'm simplifying things here wildly, but that was just kind of a stepping stone for JPL. Ultimately, Caltech took on managing the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and there's a fantastic kind of coexistence that lives there. So you've got this educational organization, and then you've got this federally funded research development center, all supporting each other. And so you've got people that are students at Caltech, and they're being primed for working at JPL or other organizations within the larger NASA family. So I mentioned it was a FFRDC. There's only 42 FFRDCs in the United States, and they're all kind of laser focused on what they do because of JPL's experience. And and just the way things kind of happened. It really is the only FFRDC within the NASA family. As mentioned, it's owned by NASA and it's managed by Caltech. So the primary function, as mentioned, is to construct, test, and launch, right, and manage these planetary robotic spacecrafts. Now, some of the interstellar missions or interplanetary missions that you may recognize are the shirt I'm wearing here, like the Cassini mission. So, you know, imagine that this was shot out to Saturn. It took 7 years to get there. And then while, you know, spinning around this massive ringed planet, it actually launched another smaller probe onto a moon of Saturn, right, called Titan. And Titan is a very unique place. Titan has methane and ethane poles, clouds, and liquid methane and ethane because it's so cold. So it's the only place in our solar system other than Earth where you see that same compound or that same element in 3 different forms, just like you see with water, in terms of having a solid form in form of ice, a liquid form like water, or like vaporous like steam, clouds, things like that. So was it worth investigating? Yes, it was. Was it easy getting there? No. But if it was a 30 or 20-year mission, and during the time that I was at JPL, I had the privilege of just learning more about it and working with that team to document their processes using the platform that we support. Cassini. JPL is largely responsible for the operation of the Deep Space Network, which are 3 different massive radar dishes on our planet. We've got one in Spain, we've got one in Australia, and we've got one here in California. So between those 3 different locations, we've always got our eyes on our various different missions throughout the solar system. And you know, these different missions manage time on these various different dishes. And so there's a lot going on. There's a lot to know, and it requires a lot of collaboration with these other various institutions, the Southwest Research Institute of the Applied Physics Lab, Johnson, you know, Kennedy. We all have to work together to monitor these things, but it all kind of starts with JPL in terms of being able to monitor those things from our planet. What are we working on? Well, we're going to do, I want to test the audio here. So there's probably one mission that you're very familiar with, which is Mars 2020. We're going to watch a 3.5-minute video of basically some revolutionary video footage of landing a rover on another planet. And if you're familiar with the whole 7 minutes of terror, 6 minutes of terror process, you know that it has to go from going thousands and thousands of miles an hour to basically a dead stop and landing on a planet, and landing this billion-dollar rover, you know, setting it gingerly down on the surface of the planet. Let's see if we can get that video to work. And Mahak and Adolfo, maybe give me a thumbs up if you can hear the video. So let's try this. Okay.
I believe you will have.
Shoot deployed.
Can you hear it now?
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
Heat shield set.
Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
Nav filter converge. Velocity solution 3.3 meters per second. Altitude 7.4 kilometers.
Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface of Mars. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation, and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
LVS valid.
We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation.
Priming. TBA is nominal.
It's found its own
We
landing
have
location.
priming of the landing engines.
This was a new feature in this version of the rover.
Back shell set.
Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
We're still in a
We have
parachute at this
confirmation that
point.
the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about a kilometer off the surface of Mars.
TRN safety Bravo.
This way.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver. Sky crane maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
We're getting signals from MRO. Tango Delta.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the signs of past life.
Oh, that's good stuff. We'll come back to this one. So I'm going to talk to you just a quick moment about Mars 2020 and the significance of Mars 2020. So let me back up here. Yeah. There we go. So has anyone not heard of the Mars 2020 vision or the Mars 2020 mission, excuse me? No? Okay. So if you're kind of keeping track of all the missions that have previously gone before Mars, be it with the United States or other governments, you know, it's extremely hard to land on Mars because it doesn't have this thick atmosphere that the Earth has. It's very hard to slow down. And if and when it comes time to take off from Mars, it will involve a number of resources and ingenuity to do so. So speaking of ingenuity, the Mars 2020 mission or rover was equipped with a passenger. And so that passenger was the Ingenuity Mars helicopter. So this will be, but this time next week, JPL will have flown Ingenuity above the Martian surface. So a tremendous amount of effort and time went into making that possible. And so I'm hopeful that at some point I'll get like an email from you guys or something saying like, hey, thumbs up, you know, like definitely share that with your friends and with your family. Make sure they know that, that it happened, that it was attempted, it was tested, and it was so. So very excited about that. That's another kind of first for JPL. So we'll know more about that next week. This particular mission has a lot of improvements to the existing instrumentation. Previous missions in landing on Mars actually involved these big bouncy balls. So the MERS, the MER, the Mars Explorer rovers, were a pair. And so you may have heard about those, Spirit and Opportunity. And so those were solar powered. So this more recent version of the rover uses isotopes, right? So it uses isotopes to keep things running. And we don't, that's a very valuable resource for NASA. And so we use those types of things very sparingly. Something else worthy of mentioning is that ideally, there'll be samples that are collected by the Mars rover 2020 rover that will be picked up at a later time. So JPL is already preparing the Mars Sample Return, or the MSR, which will actually land on the planet, find these samples, and then send them back. And so it landed in Jezero Crater. There's a lot, and so where else better to look for life than the sediment of the mouth of a river? So, like if you look at let's say the Mississippi River, you'll see that sediment is deposited at the very base of it, and so this is a great place to look for signs of life, signs of water. And while it might not be immediately apparent, it will give us an idea of understanding, where the water went. Is it underneath the surface? Did it evaporate away? What happened, right? We look at our closest neighbor, Venus, we see that it has this runaway greenhouse effect. So quite the opposite. Water can't exist on the surface. It all evaporated and went away. So a whole different planet and a whole different study. So there's a mission called Veritas that proposals are being made for. So that might be something that we look forward to as well in the near future. So Veritas will be a mission to Venus to better understand its composition and just to learn more about Venus. The next mission I'm going to show you about is Europa Clippers. So this is one that's currently in development. So does anyone know where Europa is? What Europa is? Europa is a moon that orbits Jupiter. And so if you know anything about Jupiter, you know that it comprises about 2.5% of all the mass in our solar system, the sun comprising about 97%, and everything else comprising about less than 1% of the mass in our solar system. Jupiter is the bully on the block. It's massive. And in its orbit is this fascinating planet called Europa, which is the smoothest surface in all of the solar system. And so, you look at and try to conceptualize why is it smooth? And so there's a lot of, thoughts behind that. It is when we look at our planet and we look at how deep our deepest ocean is, it goes down about 8 miles. And what that measures out in kilometers, I'm not quite sure. But imagine an ocean that's, 8 miles deep at its deepest. That's really deep. But when we look at Europa, and it is smaller than Earth, mind you, there's a crust on the outside of it. It is suspected that ocean that is underneath the surface is 60 miles deep. So imagine a moon, planetoid planet that is smaller than Earth with an ocean that is 60 miles deep. And now you think about that space in between that outer crust and where the water is. And so it's a whole different concept or idea of how life might exist on Earth. We have all this material with which to build things, right? But we also have water, which binds it and brings it together. And then we've got this energy source, which is the sun. Now, Europa and Earth share that same energy source, but just the composition of the planet is different. And so does it get that organic material from the top or the crust of the planet and the water is underneath it? It's a whole different way of conceptualizing how life might exist, very different from Earth. So is it worthy of study? Yes, it's very much worthy of study. So let me see if I can get us a little introduction to that. Here we go.
The search for life beyond Earth begins with understanding life on our home planet. And that story, the story of life on Earth, may have begun in our oceans. And that's because, of course, if we've learned anything about life on Earth, it's at where you find the liquid water, you generally find life. So what if I told you that there is an ocean out there beyond Earth? An ocean in our solar system that has been in existence for billions of years. It's an ocean that is perhaps 10 times as deep as Earth's ocean. It's an ocean that is global and may contain 2 to 3 times the volume of all the liquid water on Earth. It's an ocean that exists beneath the icy shell of Jupiter's moon, Europa. So how do we think we know that Europa's ocean exists? Well, it's a combination of using telescopes on the ground and having spacecraft that have flown by Europa and collected data about the surface, about the interior structure, and about the magnetic field around Europa. And the combination of those data sets leads us to a high degree of confidence that this global liquid water H2O ocean is there today, and it's been there for much of the history of the solar system. We used to think that in order for a world to be habitable, you had to be at just the right distance from the sun or whatever your star was, such that you could have a liquid water ocean on the surface. Now, along with liquid water, life as we know it needs 2 other keystones. The first is the building blocks for life, the stuff you find in rocks. And the second is some form of energy to help power life. And here's where Europa is a real game changer. It is far, far out from the sun, and yet it's got this liquid water ocean. And the reason that Europa has liquid water is because it's orbiting Jupiter, and the tidal tug and pull causes Europa to flex up and down, and all that tidal energy turns into mechanical energy, which turns into friction and heat that helps maintain this liquid water ocean beneath an icy shell. Along with helping maintain liquid water, we think that tidal energy may also allow that ocean to interact with rocks on Europa's seafloor. And it may even give rise to things like hydrothermal vents, which could help provide not just the building blocks for life, but also the energy for life. The question of whether or not life exists beyond Earth, the question of whether or not biology works beyond our home planet, is one of humanity's oldest and yet unanswered questions. And for the first time in the history of humanity, we have the tools and technology and capability to potentially answer this question. And we know where to go to find it. Jupiter's ocean world, Europa.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. Let me pop out of this real quickly here. Okay, can you guys all hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So, actually, you know what we didn't look at is we didn't look at OCO2. So let me back up here. And we want to look at, we're going to bounce around now. Let's look at this one. So we're going to look at the Orbiting Carbon Observatory. So let's take a quick moment and just talk about that. Has anyone heard of OCO2? Has anyone heard of this mission? Say it in the chat, or you can just say no. I'm going to presume that nobody has. Does anyone know why it would be significant to have an idea of why we measure carbon on our planet? I'm looking in the chat. Okay. So it's a greenhouse gas that sticks around. Okay, so that's one thing you need to know. I'm kind of dumbing it down now, but it sticks around, and it is, we have good reason to believe that as part of our activity on this planet, our mothership, that it's causing it to warm up. And so we need to have evidence, or we need to have an idea of not necessarily why, because we know why. We know that we are putting carbon into the atmosphere. Now, carbon can be locked in the poles as well. And as those start to melt, that is released. So other things to consider for people of your generation, apologies in advance for all the carbon. It wasn't my idea, but people like to drive cars, and obviously it's used to power things. So I'm going to read you something from OCO3, and this is an Earth-based venture. So all the sexy stuff is out there in these interplanetary missions that are really flagship missions that garner a lot of interest in what JPL and NASA does. But any bit as important are our Earth-based ventures and understanding the nature of how our planet lives and breathes, just like a heart pumps blood through your body. Our planet is no different, and it's a very special place in the universe. And it's also a very sensitive and dynamic, changing, speck of dust in our universe. So the bit that I'm going to read to you talks specifically about measuring carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is one of the most important and long-lived greenhouse gases. In fact, increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide, both man-made and natural, are responsible for about 2/3 of the total energy imbalance that is causing Earth's temperature to rise. OCO3 will measure and map CO2 with such high spatial resolution that, combined with the valuable 4.5-year data set of its predecessor, OCO2, it will paint the most detailed picture ever of human and plant influences on the carbon cycle and, in turn, climate. Specifically, the measurement will help us to understand whether the land and oceans will continue to absorb roughly half of the CO2 that is emitted each year through human consumption, or whether that rate will decrease in the future as demonstrated by these findings. Now, you've heard people that say that we've reached this tipping point and that we can't go back. So like we're approaching a very dangerous threshold. And so I'm not trying to bum anybody out on a Friday morning, but it's just something that we need to be aware of. And in the same way that our Zoom meeting was hacked, right? And I'm actually glad that happened, because there are people that will, I say people, but there are forces that exist on this planet that don't necessarily want to adhere to findings or facts. And I'm not here to judge or try to change the minds of those people. All we're trying to do is just measure it. We just want to measure it. We just want to know what is accurate. We want to know what is real. And we want to, and those details need to be shared amongst other scientists and analysts and engineers that can at least identify why these things are happening. And not like we can't change it, right? People are going to drive their cars to work. And they're going to drive, or they're going to fly on planes to go on vacation. Maybe not as much as we used to, but it is just something to be aware of. So one individual you're going to see in this video is Anne-Marie Eldering. And she's a badass. Such a badass. And if you know her, you know that she's not going to let anyone or anything stand in the way of progress.
Since about the start of the Industrial Revolution, we've seen CO2 levels in the atmosphere increase by about 30%. Human activity is causing a tipping of the scales, this very fine, delicate balance that we have and what we call the carbon cycle here.
The key motivation for the OCO3 experiment is to continue this record of carbon dioxide. OCO2 was built to last 2 years. We've had it up there for 4 years, but there's always a risk it's not going to survive. So OCO3 goes on the space station in the spring. We'd like to have measurements that cover a long duration, and OCO3 is going to help add to that record.
OCO3 is going to specifically produce a data set of carbon dioxide measurements. We'd like to be able to keep an eye on this atmospheric CO2. Where did it come from? Where is it going? And how is it related to other global processes?
When plants are doing photosynthesis, they emit a little bit of light, and we can sense that light in our measurements. So we have a measure of plant photosynthesis activity in combination with the carbon dioxide.
Plants use CO2 for growing. They absorb it into the leaves. They invert CO2 and water into sugar that they use to store the energy to grow later. The combination of these measurements tell us about the relationship between this net uptake of CO2 over time and how that is being governed by photosynthesis.
OCO2 measures every day the same time of day. With OCO3 on the space station, we're going to sample from sunlight to sundown. And so now we can learn about carbon cycle through different parts of the day. And that's really important because plants respond to sun, so we need to see them behaving across the day.
Our team designed and built an agile mechanical actuator that allows OCO3 to look at dozens of areas on the globe each day. And each of these areas is about 50 miles by 50 miles in size. So that allows us to actually focus in on specific areas, maybe urban areas, as well as agricultural regions.
This capability of OCO3 to map out some of those areas and start to see some change over time, that really is how we are going to advance our understanding and our modeling for the future and understanding of climate.
All right. So actually, maybe Mahak, I'll start with you, just out of curiosity. Like, tell me what comes to your mind when you see something like that.
Something first off, that was awesome. And when they were all talking, and when I saw the shot of like the equipment getting built, wow, it was mind blowing. It was awesome to see that. I wish I was one of those doing it. I wish I was there doing it.
You will be. You will be. You will be. So, how about you, Adolfo? When you saw those like tumbling yellow and red clouds above our cloud, like what did you feel?
Well, a bit saddened about how much we truly impact our environment, and this may not even be reversible in the future. So definitely heartbreaking.
Yeah, but that is your challenge as future, scientists, and engineers and mathematicians, technologists. This is your challenge, and there is hope. There is always hope, and we have to kind of hold on to that. This is not the end. This is not how it ends, but certainly it is rooted in the study of what it takes to actually make that change. So Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'd like to kind of see I'm kind of missing like seeing everyone. I've minimized the view, but no matter. We're going to press on, and this perhaps to me is my favorite part of the presentation, and that is that how do you stay relevant in an environment that is constantly changing? So one thing we love about science is that we get to measure things, and one thing we love about space is it's very slow and intentional, right? Like about 30 days from now, I'm going to look up in the sky and the moon's going to be in the exact, or look the same way that it did about a month ago. I can measure that. There's something like quantifiable about that. What is so frustrating and very challenging about technology is that the technology that we're using today will not necessarily be the same as it was, or as it will be in 1 year from now. So a big part of that in particular is, people talk about the cloud, and all that means is, you're not saving things locally, you're saving things up in a remote location. That's all it is. That's all the cloud is. I mean, there's much more to it. Somebody may try to sell you something else, but really, cloud computing is just not working locally. It's working on servers that are in other locations. This is kind of the nature of a network. So how do we stay relevant? How do we make a difference? And it always starts with you and your passion for what you do. So one of my favorite interview questions is, what are you passionate about? I'm passionate about technology. And that all stems from these childhood experiences that I had with puzzles and problems and things that were put to me to resolve or to fix or to make better, be it, Lego and putting something together with Lego and reading the instructions and then not reading the instructions and making it my own, or whether it was, researching things or very technical rule sets. I love to play Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. I don't have the time as much anymore. As I started to get more into information technology, taking apart computers and putting them back together again. And then ultimately that led to like coding and things like that, things of that nature, where I got more out of kind of a hardware environment, more into like a software environment. So if you know what you are passionate about, you're really like ahead of the game, because the interview answer that I'll give you is that, if you say to somebody, I'd be doing this even if you weren't paying me, it's going to stop them in their footsteps, because they're going to realize that you'd be doing this anyways. Like it's not about the money. It's never been about the money. It's like, this is who I was meant to be. So ask yourself this question as you approach your career and as you approach, there's all this pressure, like remember being in my 20s and there was so much pressure, and so just go back to where you began and what you are passionate about. That will help you on your way. And when you have moments of doubt, just come back to that. I come back to Lego. I come back to Dungeons and Dragons, and then it's all easy again. Something else is I mentioned, technology moves. It evolves very quickly, and so you have to be prepared to change. So versions change. There's rollouts. There's, we're seeing this big shift right now in cloud technology. Things, where we are hosting servers ourselves and patching them and maintaining them. Now we're handing this off to a third party to manage and patch and keep secure. And so there's a certain amount of trust that comes along with that. So if you're in the technology realm, like look into, computer learning, artificial intelligence, and security. Those are three industries that are going to continue to grow. And as well as things like governance. So if you're not like a coder, you're not doing like CS so much as you're doing CIS, the latter being what I kind of focused on, because I didn't want to have to take, calculus and things of that nature, or have to take multiple classes in that. I was fascinated with information systems, but I really wanted to, I liked the human element as well. And not, I did some coding, right? So you have to be prepared to maybe kind of change your direction. And so, for me, one of the ways that I did that is I like project management as well. Something to know about project management is it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And you are managing people and time and money, right? So very finite. And you've got time and money and level of effort. So there's this kind of triangle that kind of flexes in different directions. You've got a lot of money, but you don't have a lot of time, right? So, or you don't have a lot of time, but you have a lot of money. So you can see this triangle looks different ways depending on these three variables. So that's been kind of like my plan B all the time I've been working in information technology. So you can find something that's related. So let's just say you're going to focus on Amazon Web Services. AWS is a giant amongst cloud service providers. So like a pretty good angle to have. Like you couple that with something like Python, you've got like a good 10 to 15 years of work, right? That's going to be around for a long time. Same thing can be said for Azure. So I'm like a Microsoft guy, so I do a lot of work in SharePoint, M365, and Azure, and those are all very well established. So when somebody came to speak at Western Carolina University, one of the warnings he had for us, and he was right, was don't learn applications, learn the code behind them. So anyone can press a button, but not everyone knows why the button does what it does. You have to understand that code, regardless of whether you're a biologist, a physicist, you're someone that's in computer science, you're still going to have to code. So if you're thinking that you're not going to have to code and work in any one of these four related sciences, or I suppose ideas, concepts, constructs, like I invite you to revisit your path. You're going to need to code. And if you can, even if it's just writing, pivot tables in Excel, you're going to be respected and people are going to trust you. And so coding is a part of everyday life. And that is just the way we are moving and evolving. And so, your creative energy can be spent playing a game. Your creative energy can also be spent like making a game and being a part of that and actually putting out your creative energy into the world as opposed to consuming somebody else's creative output. So I'll say that again. You only have so much creative energy in a day that you have to give. So you can put that into something that you construct for yourself, that you build for a later time, or you can be on the receiving end of somebody else's creative energy that they put out that you then consume. Either one is fine. I like to play games, right? But I also like to write music. I also like to troubleshoot issues and look through air logs to figure out why something doesn't work the way that it does. I'm naturally curious. And if you have that, when things change and technology does evolve, you can move with it. The next thing on my list here is imagine it first and do it now. So everyone take a moment right now, and you can put it in the chat if you're so inclined, if you're still kind of with me. And write your dream job into the chat, put it out into the universe as we speak right now. Write your own job title. It could be astronaut, it could be engineer, it could be grand chief mathematician. Put it in the chat, put it into the universe and state it. And imagine it first, because we all don't know where we're going. We don't know what that looks like. But if you have an idea yourself, no one's putting anything in the chat. Come on. So if you imagine it first, then you can know what it looks like as it starts to approach what you want to be. Somebody put something in the chat. We can move on. Revisit your joy of learning every day. So I realized at Santa Monica College, oh good, it's lighting up now. In my first semester at Santa Monica City College, I remember being at the back of an auditorium that was about 10 seats wide and about 40 seats long. And I was at the very back of the auditorium, and I was in a history of art, an art history class. And I was very intimidated because I was 3 weeks in and I was already falling behind. And I realized at that moment, I'm in the wrong place. I want to get a music degree, but I'm having to take art history. And what I didn't realize at the time is that I'm just getting started. You kids are half my age. I'm 51. So there's still plenty of time. And in that class, I realized it's not about art history so much. It's about the degree. Yes, it's about the degree, but it's also about creating opportunity for myself. It's about building myself up and giving myself the tools that I need to be successful. And part of that is enjoying learning no matter what you're doing. So if you're, whatever that may be, right? So I live out here in Temecula. We have a lot of birds, right? I've learned, I tried to move these nests and replace the nests. When they build them on our roof, I just leave them there now. And so I'm through fighting these birds. Like I've become part of the forest, right? So I'm learning to like live with the animals that inhabit my immediate area. So I'm through fighting that. I don't want to fight it. Same thing can be said for bees, although it's easier to move a nest than it is to move a hive. So there's another learning opportunity. Okay, so here's a thought. Like, who are you in the business of? So when I ask you that, like, who do you want to work for? And there should always be one answer and only one answer. And that is when somebody asks me, I say that I am in the business of Eugene Perry. You are building your own personal brand, and people will come to know and trust that if you are good at what you do and you are passionate about what you do, if you believe in it, truly believe in it. You need to establish that brand, that business of who you are. And a great way to do that is, well, I'll tell you my 3 laws of business at the end of all of this if you still want to know. And then the final part of this is, and if you've read What Color is Your Parachute, which is all about the job of finding a job, like when you're trying to find a job, you should be doing that 8 hours a day, not 3 hours a day, not 4 hours a day. It's not something you do for an hour when you wake up. Your job, when you're looking for a job, is something you do 8 hours a day. You imagine the job you want, you imagine the type of company that you want to work for, and you put together your resume and your cover letter, and you seek it out and find it. And then you apply yourself wholly to attaining that opportunity. 99 of 100 people will tell you this, and the answer is no, right? And what you need to know is that if you are in the business of you, right, you need to be in the business of what? Knowing. You need to know that you are worthy, that you are capable. And even if you don't immediately believe that and somebody gives you the opportunity, you have to rise to that opportunity. So just remember that for every job interview you go on, like, 99 of them, you will fail. And that's okay, because part of learning is failing. So I suppose in closing on this, and like how to be successful in technology, is don't worry about failing. Failing is inevitable. You will fail. It's all in the recovery. So and there's some great JPL learning lessons along the way. One of them is I think it was the Deep Space Probe 1, and something had gone wrong with it very early on, and the instrument on the spacecraft that measured where it was broken. And so they weren't able to, the spaceship wasn't able to determine, like, to find its kind of North Star, figure out where the sun is. And so they weren't able to control the spacecraft, but there was these engineers that were very persistent, and they figured out a way to monitor the craft in such a way that they would send out signals at the time as it was spinning in space. They knew when to send the signal out or when to look for it. And that way they were able to communicate with it. And then they had to very closely monitor this. So imagine only hearing about, every 10 seconds, only hearing about 1 second of what I'm saying, because I'm spinning around and around. But then what you're able to do is you can say, listen for that 1 second, and then try to understand what he's saying in that 1 second. And then at some point they were able to control the spacecraft in such a way that they were able to get a signal to it and control it and continue through with the mission. A fascinating story. So let's talk about internships. We're kind of in the closing few minutes here. We'll do a little Q&A, but I do want you to know a little bit about internships. And I'm going to show you how easy this is after I talk about this. So as you can see here, you're not going to be making coffee. They're going to put your ass to work. Right? Like, and it's not easy. So I've had a couple of friends when I came to speak at SFC who I spoke with, and they were actually involved with like mapping the surface of Europa and doing something that was very relevant and very exciting. And listen, people really get these internships. You've got to apply. And especially as members of this particular institution, you know, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you be involved in this? And, you know, what's also great about this is like, you know, we all kind of huddle together, you know, for warmth as scientists and engineers and people in technology and mathematics. There's safety in numbers. So like if somebody's working on an internship on something specific, like help them out. They'll help you out as well. Like we have to stick together. And JPL realizes that having that kind of that newness helps JPL to build kind of a better mousetrap, if you will. So you are important to JPL as an intern, very, very important. So 600 internships, there's summer programs, you know, you can get some sort of stipend or you know, like a little bit of money to kind of keep you going. And then you can also figure out like, you know, what JPL, what NASA, what these other institutions are willing to pay for. So what specific types of study are of value and how that translates into cash and how you can be in the business of you and also be in the business of providing for JPL. The last thing I'll say on this, and then I'm going to kind of show you really quickly, you know, actually how to find out how to do this. You've got to build your network. So you've got to get out on LinkedIn. You got to get it on Indeed.com. You've got to constantly be doing searches. And I know it feels like a lot of pressure, but it's something that you can do kind of in your off time until you're looking for a job full time. You've got to build your network. And that can start with this organization with NSTEM right now. So really quickly, I'm going to show you how to look for a job at JPL. So what I'm going to do is here, everyone see my screen?
Yep, good to go.
Okay. JPL internship. Okay, still with me? Look at this. Okay, 63 more jobs. STEM internships. Okay, here's a little bit about it. There's that awesome little picture that I grabbed. And if you want to go apply, right, well, here you go, right? Year-round internships, summer internships, faculty research programs. There's partner programs with Caltech. There's workshops out there. Many of these things are available at no cost. So I won't tolerate anyone saying like, well, where do I go or what do I do? It's all there. And if you're serious about what you do and what you want to do, like, you know, get out there, get out there and be noticed and get paid for what you do and what you're passionate about. Let's see if I can get back into the presentation here.
Gene, can we please get the link in the chat?
Sure. I'm just reading these comments. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a little more snappy repartee in the comments. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I like lighting up the comments. I mean, it's just like, it becomes like stand-up comedy for me. I kind of encourage that silliness. So don't think for any second that that detracts from what we're trying to do here. Okay, so we got the chat. We've got where to look for internships. And I'm like strongly encouraging you to pursue internships because, you know, it's free, right? Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, okay, final bit in closing here. I have a picture here with 5 of my friends from high school. They are my kind of inner circle. We stay connected together. We were in, we formed our own little physics club of 5, you know, 30 some odd years later, 35 years later, we're still friends and we still talk about and are inspired by our physics teacher, who is Bill Layton. The friendships that you make now, like, make them last a lifetime. And so your primary partner in all of this is Mount San Jacinto City College. Stay close to them and get to know your instructors, the admins, the professors that have provided this foundation for you. Stay close to MSTEM, constantly update your team on what you're doing, what you're pursuing, and how to help other people in on your team. You're a fool to think you can do it alone. So your 5 family, friends, colleagues, people in your educational institution, as well as mentors. Mentors are people that are not paying, that you're not paying for their services. They just provide it as part of wanting to share what they know. So I know that Mount San Jacinto City College is coming to my daughter's high school here in Temecula High School. And so pay this forward to, I want to say junior high school, but middle school, like share your knowledge with these people who are younger than you. And you'll see that you'll find that people are willing to share this with you in the same way that I'm sharing with what I know right now. I still stay in touch with a lot of the groups that I've spoken with in the past. And I'm so excited to see, my friend Val and Garrison, they were both SMC students that got internships at JPL. And it was like this, like, even if they don't get a job there, it's a great way to start. Okay, let's break things. Usually people like questions, but like usually I like to kind of put this out there. I've got 3 laws of business that I'm going to share with you, and this will be kind of our closing. For starters, I want to thank Mahak and Haley and Adolfo for bringing me on board here. What a fantastic team. You've got great leadership. Continue to stay in touch with them, figure out how you can become more involved in this program. And these honor societies. One of the questions that I was asked is, why is STEM important? You have to ask yourself, why is the truth important? Like, at what point did facts and the truth become optional? It's really what we do with it. So 3 laws of business. Number 1 is, actually, not going to lie, I've been a little disappointed with the chat, but what do you think the first rule of business is? And actually, Adolfo, let me ask you, what do you think the first rule of business is? And I'll put this out to Adolfo and Mahak and Haley, if she's out there.
I think the first rule of business would be to...
No wrong answers here, but I'm just curious to know what you might think it might be.
Well, to work on yourself and to learn enough so you can...
Right, start with yourself. That would be a good business. The first law of business is be on time. Okay, especially if someone's paying you, don't be late. Think of time as the common denominator by which you will get money and respect. If you are not on time, you're not in business. So be on time. Rule number 2 is to be honest in your business dealings. Be honest in your business dealings. So don't try to gain an advantage through being untruthful. You may be rewarded in the short run, but believe me, it will come back to bite you in the butt later. Allow your colleagues to have trust in you, garner their respect through your actions, not your words, and be honest in your business dealings. And then the final, I suppose, kind of law of business that I've had is seek to exceed people's expectations. So if they ask for it on Wednesday, they really mean I want it on Wednesday. Give it to them on Tuesday. And that way you can kind of establish yourself as someone that's trustworthy and someone that can be counted on, right? So exceed people's expectations. I'm going to put it in the chat just for yucks, just to say, be on time, be honest.
Gene, you're just sending it to me. Not to everybody, but
everyone.
To answer your question, I know when you had asked what one of the laws of business is going to be, I would also have to say, be prepared. Be prepared mentally and physically prepared for any of the challenges that face you, that you're going through, that come to you at that moment. For example, like we had the Zoom bombing, right? And
I'm so glad it happened.
Me too, in a way. But I got really scared and anxious, and I was like, I need to get these guys out very quickly. And that's exactly what I did.
Well, and it's all in the recovery. Failure is inevitable.
Exactly. And
failure is inevitable. You will fail. And at JPL, people fail up, and that's okay. Like somebody makes $1 million, error. It's like, you don't fire them. You don't necessarily promote them, but you're like, no, they know how not to do that again. So we just paid $1 million for it. Maybe not a fair split, but we're not going to fire them.
Yeah. And I would also have to say trial and error, and just learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. Yes, progress. You've got that. That's my little quote down there. My own little, progress is our greatest natural resource. So like forward, onward, right? And then actually, so my 3 rules of being a good human would be, so really, I think the only species that really lies on our planet is humans. So it comes back to like, tell the truth. And being in this science, if you're not telling the truth, people are gonna they're gonna snuff that out pretty quickly. So tell the truth. The other one I'd have to say is be cool, right? Like, so one of my favorite lyrics from a Little Feat song is the same people you meet on the way up, you might meet up on the way down. So treat people the same way you want to be treated. And at JPL, a big part of that is inclusion. So she, hers, he, his, those sorts of things, those pronouns are more important now than ever. Now I'm 51, I can't relate as easily because I'm just kind of old and set in my ways, but it doesn't mean I can't learn, I don't want to learn. People want to hear things a certain way. And so, and that's another way, kind of a thing is that it's not enough to say it, like you have to mean it. And a lot of times it's the way you say it. And you hear, husbands and wives talk about this all the time. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. And so that definitely, there's a difference between thanks and like, thanks, like thank you and thank you, there's so just remember that, especially when you're dealing with people in this particular, like, they don't have a lot of time. So, don't read too much into it, and just treat people the way you want to be treated. And the last one is about, that I've mentioned is that failure is inevitable. And so it's all in the recovery. So did the presentation go on? Yes, Mahak, it did. Quick thinking. And I suppose with that, I just want to thank everyone with the MSTEM group for taking time to include me and for including JPL in their quest for truth and pursuit of everything and anything STEM. If anyone has questions, if they want to chat or if they want to add anything to it, I think we're ready to close up and be okay if we don't have any questions. If you had any questions about missions or anything specifically that I covered, you can ask them now. If not, that's okay too.
I had one question. Gene, so how were you involved in most of these missions? So Cassini, Mars 2020, what was your involvement?
Great question. So what exactly do I do here? So I work specifically in a Microsoft technology called SharePoint. And so SharePoint is a collaboration platform. And so even though you may have 2 degrees in geology and earth sciences, you may not know how to actually share a presentation with other people simultaneously and editing a document. So what I'll be able to do is work with these teams, collaborate with them, figure out how they want to store their data, how they want to share their data, how to configure permissions with their data, how to present their data, as well as how to share it with other groups, to provide best practices for archiving, best practices for document management. So that's a large part of what I do is just kind of a glorified kind of librarian of data and details. So we're used to working with things in files and folders, which doesn't necessarily translate that well to the cloud. Really, the cloud is more about just like putting data up there, attaching metadata to it, and then searching for it, just as you would kind of like your brain works that way. But so often, people my age and even older are used to this file folder paradigm. There's a desktop kind of file folder paradigm. And if like your Gmail, you just archive things, right? Your just inbox is full of stuff. It doesn't work in that same kind of file folder format. Instead, you search for things. So helping people to better understand how to work with their data, how to archive their data, how to generate metrics, how to kind of create like dashboard things out so they can see where their data is, and make sense of it. So with the Cassini mission, the Cassini final mission report was, imagine almost a 30-year mission coming to conclusion and having to put that information out there in a collaboration space what does that look like? How do we do it? How do we arrange our data? And what format do we use? Are we using PDF? Or are we using doc or docx's? Like, what does this look like? And so helping them to do so in the most efficient manner and provide best practices for document management. So I do that with a number of different missions. Cassini in particular is one that I did a lot of work on, specifically with their science leads and with their ops managers. But I've also prepared SharePoint sites for the Europa team, assisted with like troubleshooting custom development for their teams as well. Assisted with Mars, kind of managing an API for the Mars 2020 team. And just like huge data sets. Same thing with like Juno, MDR. All these groups have SharePoint sites within the JPL fold. They have different repositories that they use as well, be it Google Drive and whatnot. But you also have to be mindful of a little thing called ITAR. So ITAR data is data that can be used to create, like, let's say, a rocket. So all that data has to be locked down. So you have to kind of understand what type of data is it. Is it sensitive? Is it confidential? Is it secret, or is it personal? So you have to kind of then classify these data types as to what it is you're storing up there and who has access to it and why do they have access to it, right? So that is more specifically what I do in terms of like assisting with the larger effort.
Have you met any of like the engineers or scientists?
Oh yeah.
Mingle with them, because
yeah,
I'm a big fan of Adam Seltzner, and I actually spoke with him once. He came to talk to I believe it was a virtual student conference where I went to it. Some NSTEM members went to it, and it happened last year. And I actually got to talk to him, and I didn't even know he was like the lead engineer on some of these missions. But have you ever spoken to him?
Yeah. So if you go out there and you look at some of there were these Thursday night. What was the name of the Von Karman? So there's these Von Karman sessions that they do on Thursday nights, and so when they were doing the sessions on the Cassini mission, I can't remember her name now. So let me see if I can find her. Bill Knopf, Cassini team. So let me see here if I can find her. So she's one of my heroes. I'm trying to find out specifically who it was because I can't remember her name. But she basically came to JPL as, like in her like early 20s. And she basically, her entire career, Linda Spilker. Linda Spilker is a titan amongst project scientists. And then also a gentleman who I had the pleasure of working with directly, who's Earl Mays, who is also I think he was the PM or the program manager. So, and then also, I don't know if you saw me like choking up when I was talking about the OCO3, like Anne-Marie Eldring, like she had so few resources available to her. Like all these other missions are getting millions and millions of dollars, and she only got this like small amount of money, but she, fought for it. And people tried to like kind of push that mission down that were outside of JPL and NASA. They tried to like take away funding or make it more difficult because it may be, we don't know, that they might not have necessarily wanted to see the results. And she's like, oh, hell no. Like, I'm going to fight for this mission, and I'm going to fight for our species. I'm going to fight for this project. I'm going to fight for this money because this is important. And seeing it that close up, seeing somebody's like personal mission to put this thing into orbit so we can measure the carbon around our planet, so we can like just measure it. I'm not trying to say what to do with this data, but it affects you. And so you have just profound respect for these people who've put themselves out there and, are there, 12 hours a day. And their first mission, OCO1, like fell in the drink. It failed. It crashed and burned. And so they had to go back, and OCO2 was built from recycled parts. They had to just kind of pick through what was available and put together their craft and get it back into orbit, like by any means necessary. And there's a lot of that in the scientific industry. You have to fight for funding. Like if you want to talk about fighting for funding, see what the Huygens probe team went through. They actually went to Poland because the Berlin Wall had just come down. And so now all these scientists out in Poland were willing to share their resources so that they could have kind of some insight into, interplanetary, exploration. And so they couldn't get money. So they went over there, and like, you look at the Huygens probe, there was a ton of interns working on that. Ton of interns working on launching a spaceship from a spaceship that's millions of miles out, right? 7 years to get there. And so you look at these like 20-something-year-old kids that are involved in these massive projects. So yes, am I affected? Am I like vested? Yeah, it's cool. They're cool people. I mean, like if they had trading cards, I'd be buying it every week, Yeah. So listen, I should, if there's no more questions, does anyone have any more questions for me?
Or comments?
Or comments, yeah.
Oh, I just had a quick question. Going back to what you said about OCO3 and just fighting for funding, how do we deal with people who are dishonest in their career?
Well, business is business, right? So, which is not to say that you're going to get that anywhere you go, but this comes back to being truthful and being passionate. And, I do remember a situation where I was out with the group that I had mentioned earlier. It was the Temecula, I don't know if it was the Planetary Society or what it was, but they're a group that basically get out there with their telescopes. And I watched them kind of battle with some people that really didn't believe that we're trying to kind of poo-poo evolution. And, without getting too political about it, everyone's entitled to their own kind of opinions. But, these older guys, these kind of graybeards, they weren't having it, and they were getting ready to scrap. They weren't going to be told that this was some, that somebody, built this from a kit, like this happened over many, many years. And it's hard for us to imagine that our small human minds are still kind of coming to terms with it. But generally speaking, when you're up against that kind of adversity, really just don't do it alone. Like find your friends, like, huddle with people that, want to, that share the same philosophy, that feel the same way. You don't have to be alone in that sort of thing. And that's the beautiful thing about a collaboration, is that you don't have to go it alone. And so if you're dealing with people that are trying to mislead you or be dishonest with you, then rally to the people that believe the same things that you do, which should always start with the truth. Great question.
What's your advice on a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? Sure.
So, conservative and liberal, in terms of grow the business, sustain the business. There's different ways of thinking about it. And really, it's all about measuring risk. So for me in project management, you have to manage these things and be very honest. You have to make estimations. So there's a lot of emphasis put on not guesstimating, but like estimating. We will need X amount of dollars for this amount of time and this number of resources. And so in terms of like having a growth mindset or a fixed, for me, I'm seeking out a more fixed asset as I prepare to put my daughters through college. So I need to kind of stabilize my kind of situation, be it my like personal and emotional relationship with them, as well as finances and things that are within and without my control, or within my ability to change. So at your age, in my 20s, I was like in the back of a van, like waking up in a different city like every other week. And I realize now, had I started earlier on my career in technology, I would be that much further along. And so it's always duty now for the future, and measuring risk, and with finances in particular, that was my biggest challenge in my 20s, was how do I deal with money? Because I don't live at home, but I'm also, I'm still, I can't, I have to keep the lights on. And so, I was dispatching tow trucks till 7 a.m. and I'd go to school at 8, and I would have to roller skate there because I didn't have a skateboard and I didn't have a bike. I just had, that was what was available to me. And, after a while, I was able to hang on to like a job waiting tables. At some point, I got a job at Electronic Arts testing video games, but I knew that I wanted to stay in school. I knew that was important, that I wanted to retain my love of learning. And it really comes down to, what are you willing to risk? How much are you willing to risk on what it is that you're investing your time and effort into? So, right now, I'm not in a growth mindset right now. I don't need to hedge those risks. And right now it's all about stabilizing and sustaining the business, if you will. A long-winded answer, but there you are.
I got a follow-up. Do you still roller skate? Like, how are the roller skates?
I do still like to roller skate. If you see my Facebook page, you'll see me out there with Corinne, my daughter, roller skating. We would go out to the epic rollertainment, and we would roller skate. It was really fun to do. I still love to do it. I'm a big skateboarder. I grew up in Santa Monica, so really like this was, are you a man or are you not a man? Can you skateboard? And there's also like a certain kind of physics to skateboarding that I came to like appreciate and respect, having fractured my skull when I was in 4th grade. Is Epic open? Shawnee, it's open?
Yes, sorry, I'm in 2 meetings at the same time here, but yes, it's open. I went a couple weeks ago, and yeah, we're going to go tonight, I think, for the open skate.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, if you see me out on Facebook, you'll see me roller skating with my daughter. I love to roller skate. It's so beautiful. And she's so good at it. So she plays roller hockey. So she's also someone that I expect. She asked me, I remember, she's like, Dad, do you think I'll be an engineer? And I was like, Corinne, you're already an engineer. She do puzzles and like her mind's already thinking that way. So yeah, on a closing note, unless anyone has any questions, I do want to say, like, if you think that way and you do really enjoy puzzles, be it in any shape or form, you're an engineer. Like, it's okay. Like, you can say that, and the degree will come and the money will come. You just have to not give up on it.
One last question. I see you're wearing the Cassini Missions shirt. How do we get swag like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, the JPL store. There's a JPL store out there, and actually going to visit JPL is the most ideal way. Visits aren't as commonplace these days. I used to do a lot of tours when I was there, but go out to there should be a JPL store up on the JPL site. So just do a search on JPL store, and you'll find, thejplstore.com. There's a ton. Oh, there's all kinds of cool. The new Mars 2020 shirts are out with the bitchin' new logo. Those are really good. Lots of great shirts and pins and all those sorts of things. So I'm a big fan of that stuff, especially the JPL stuff, just because it's kind of close to home. The commemorative t-shirts are really good ones. So let's see if I can share my screen one last time here. Can I do it? I'll try. Sure. Here we go. Yeah, so this is the new, the Jezero Crater kind of commemorative t-shirt. This little logo right here. This is the one you want. It's a really good one. Yeah, it's got the little logo on the back. So this is the logo that was for all the people that were in the medical industry.
Pretty cool. Awesome. Could we get the link in the chat?
Sure can.
The JPL store. And one last question.
Sure.
So NSTEM, the NSTEM team, when we go back on campus after COVID, after hopefully everybody gets vaccinated and we move on to the orange tier, because currently I believe we're in the red tier or purple.
Please red.
Wrong. Red tier. And as I will be still staying on with Hope and STEM, I was hoping that maybe we could take a tour of Caltech and JPL. Is that still happening?
Anything is possible. Anything is possible. And, as, people who are excited and passionate about it, I see no reason why not. As soon as that is available, let's just stay in touch and see if we can make it happen.
Of course, I'll definitely stay in touch with you. And unless there aren't any more questions or comments in the chat, or even, you can unmute yourself, let's be sure to conclude this event. Thank you guys so much for attending, and thank you, Gene, for joining us. It's
been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
We'll be sure to stay in touch.
Great.
Thank you so much, Gene.
It's been a real pleasure. Love the Marley poster.
Thank you.
One love.